All right, scholars, we are doing an actual review that's not on the quiz here. This is one that I feel like just helps a lot of people practice more symbolic proofs. You will have 1 to 2 of these on your test on Wednesday or Thursday, so I want to make sure that you're prepared for these. Now, the cool thing is, I want to remind you, you need to know your logical arguments, or these don't work. It doesn't make sense. So I'm just writing them down quickly, so I have at least another reference point when I'm working with these. And I'm going to put my LS down here, if P, then R, and then I have over here law of contrapositives. If P, then Q, therefore not Q, then not P. Okay, so now I have the 4 laws. All right, this is going to be a little bit different. What I'm going to ask you to do is to pause, not start, stop, but pause the video. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to pause the video, then you're going to do the proof, unpause, check yourself. Pause, do the video, unpause, check yourself. And you have just 3 proofs, all right? So there's 1 on the back side. So if you only get through 1, that's great. If you get through 2, that's great. But I just want to make sure that you know how to do these. So in your brain, what are you going to do right now? Pause, right? So pause it, work the problem, and then restart it when you're ready to go. Or maybe you want to do all 3 and then do it. But however you choose to do it, pause and then start again. So I'm going to start with this. And remember, proofs, a little bit different than an algebraic proof. We say premise for our reason if we come up from the premises or given information. On the algebraic proof, we'd say given is where we'd start with this. But remember, these are T-column proofs, so I want to go statements on the left, reasons on the right. We number all of them. And then we always are going to start with a premise, okay? So with this one, you have to start how you want to on here. I'm looking at this, and I see a couple different ways that'd be very valid. I'm going to start with the following one. If R, then W. Now, I, on purpose, look through my other premises for anything that might fit into one of my 4 arguments. Well, the one that clicks for me right away is I'm like, ooh, another conditional statement with a W in it. So I put that down next. If that's funny. If W, then X. All right, so that's going to be premise. Then with that, I know I can combine those 2 together. So I know because of LS, because again, we're looking with LS, I get if R, then X. And then I tell people, what did I use? I used steps 1 and 2 using LS to get there. So I've used these 2. Now I have to decide what I want to do next. Now I'm looking at this, I have a not T. I don't have a T here, so that doesn't help me. But I do have an X, then a T, so I'm going to choose this one to be my premise that I pull out. There's my premise. Now I'm going to ignore steps 1 and 2. I'm going to look at 3 and 4. So when I do that, I get here if R, then T. And the reason why I knew that, I'm looking at this, I see LS once again. Now please don't skip LS's. You can put 3 together and they're like, oh, they all combine, but you have to show me every step. So this would be 3 and 4. Now, what's left is I'm using this, I have to go back to my premise. I have not T. Now, the moment I see a single premise with a one proposition, it's not another conditional. I have 2 choices. I have LD or MT. So I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, look. I negated the conclusion, so therefore I can negate my hypothesis. Oh look, I get my not R. And that's going to be modus tollens 5 and 6. Do not forget your therefore symbols on the proofs, your very last step. Alright, now again, after you create it, hit pause and try the next one. Now again, could you have done this one different than me? Yes. You know what you could have done? You could have, if you wanted to, you could have started with these 2 and used modus tollens like the whole time. So you could do all modus tollens. So there's more than one way you could do this. And if you want to make sure if it works, come find me. All right, practice proof number 2. This one is very short and sweet and kind of evil because you have to make sure you know how to do it. So I still have my statements and my reason side. Notice I still number them. So I'm going to start, and the first thing I'm going to do is I want to get rid of these negation symbols, because if I can come with a conditional statement with no negation symbols, those aren't very helpful for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go if not R, then not T. Now, what is the one logical argument that can use a single conditional statement. That's right, law of contrapositives. So you get if T, then R, and that's LC1. Now I go back and I go if R, then S. I write my other premise down. And when you do that, you get therefore, because those simplify out, if T, then S, that's going to end up being LS 2 and 3. A 4-step proof. Now I did that one because it was kind of fun to work with. But now again, turn over, okay? And then hit pause again and try this last one. Okay, now with this last one, I'm going to probably take a different approach than a lot of people would on this one. So let's see how people would agree with me on it. So I'm going to go with this first one. Okay, so I'm going to put my line here. The first one I'm going to actually go is going to go if C, then B, okay? And that is going to be my premise. And the very next one I'm going to put is the not B. Now the reason why I picked it is I know I could do modus tollens with this one. So I get not C. I get modus tollens 1 and 2. Oops, I forgot my T there. Now here's the cool thing about it, okay? I'm looking at this and I see here a not C, then a not A. I have a not C here. Well, I'm going to try that. And that's a premise. Now remember, I've already used up 1 and 2, so the only 2 I can look at are these 2. And what do I see here, guys? I see a hypothesis that's being repeated. I have a conditional statement, a proposition, a hypothesis being repeated perfectly. I can therefore get the conclusion. And that's using law of detachment 3 and 4. So I've used those. Now what's the only thing left that I have? Oh, well, I have here if D, then A. That's a premise. And then remember, I've used up all the way through 4. So now I look at these and I'm like, oh, look, my conclusion is being negated. So therefore, not D. And that's just using modus tollens. And there I get it. 5 and 6. Remember, don't forget your therefore symbol. Now, if some of you probably would have liked to do, and you could have done this and been valid, use law of contrapositive, and you could have used LS for a while after that. So you have more than one way of doing this. I hope this gets you started. I hope it works well and that you have do a great job on the test.